Welcome to the Joy Unleashed Project, where we explore the art and science of living a vibrant, purposeful life after 45. I'm your host, Mattie Cummins, and I'm here to guide you through transformative conversations that will ignite your inner brilliance. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the transformation framework, sharing powerful stories, expert insights, and practical strategies that help dynamic women, just like you, embrace this exciting chapter of life. Whether you're navigating a teenager at home, an empty nest, caring for aging parents, or all of the above, or you're simply ready to prioritize your own joy, you're in the right place. Get ready to unlock new possibilities, build meaningful connections, and create the vibrant future you deserve. This is more than just a podcast. It's your invitation to join a community of bold women who are rewriting the rules of midlife. Let's unleash your joy together. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Joy Unleashed Project. My name is Mattie Cummins, and I'm your host, and I am really excited today to spend some time with you talking about the invisible burden that we often carry around how we have expectations, or we feel like we have expectations from people, and how do we build boundaries. If you've listened to a previous episode around the mental load, here's the thing I think that's really important, and I mentioned boundaries briefly during that episode. So if you haven't heard that, feel free to go back and listen to that first, or you can listen to it after this as well. But here's part of what that mental load does. Is it's just kind of like we're carrying it in our brain all the time. So we're always sitting around going, there's this thing. Like I kind of compare it to wearing a big backpack with rocks in it. Like we carry this burden around, and it's this mental load of just kind of this chaos of stuff. Like that when we feel like there's expectations we can't meet, often those mental loads are just wandering around with us, and it weighs us down. And so part of what I talked about in that episode was around boundaries. And so today we're going to talk about what are boundaries. I think we don't always understand what boundaries are. And then we're going to talk about 4 ways that you can really set boundaries in and make it really impactful for you and your life. One of the things I think is really important when we talk about boundaries is that people don't always know what boundaries are. And there's a couple of rules around boundaries that I want you to consider. One of those is that boundaries are for you. They're not for the other person. And so that premise as we walk through this is really, really super important, because we want people to respect our boundaries, but that's not really their job. Our job is putting the boundaries into place and maintain the boundary as much as it makes sense to us. So that's a really important concept to think about when we're talking about the boundaries. One of the things I think it's really important too that we understand is this mental load that we carry when we don't have boundaries. It just keeps increasing that mental load, and it creates stress, it creates burnout, it creates resentment. We just really feel like we are carrying around all this stress because of other people's stuff. That's really our job to pay attention to and to decide what belongs to me, what belongs to you. So today we're going to give you a permission slip to put yourself first. This is what we do in the Unleashed Project. Joy Unleashed Project, as well as the Flourish Collective, is really help you understand that it's okay to put yourself first. And that's what we're going to be talking about today when we come to boundaries. So why do we struggle with boundaries? I think this is a really important question because, one, we just weren't taught boundaries. It's just not part of for women over the age of 45. Boundaries were not even part of the conversation. So it's not that it's someone's fault, or it's not that we weren't somebody didn't do the right thing, our parents didn't do the right thing. This is a newer concept, and so boundaries really weren't a part of the discussion. I think part of why we struggle specifically over age 45 with boundaries is because we're in the sandwich generation trap of having aging parents, career demands, kids who are, growing up but still need us. And so there's this constant push and pull around how do we really, who needs us and what do we need to be doing. And I know for myself, when I always can tell when my boundaries have to get kind of reevaluated because I'm feeling this stress and I'm feeling like I need to solve everybody's problems. That's one of my coping mechanisms, is wanting to solve everybody's stuff. And so those signs that we'll continue to talk through and that will help you figure out how to guide yourself in that is really this ability to stop and go, wait a minute, in my case, I'm trying to solve everybody's problems. So what's going on that I need to reevaluate the boundaries? So, I think the other thing is that when we were growing up, especially if that you are a Christian or grew up in a religious environment, it was very selfish to tell people no, and you just didn't tell people no. Like, you told people, yes, I can do that. Like, there's this guilt that happens when we start feeling like we got to tell people no. No is a really, really hard word for me for a very long time. And it's because it's just part of the culture I grew up in, that you're kind to people, but kindness doesn't mean saying yes all the time. Kindness means being true with people and having truth and saying no in a kind way, but not feeling guilty because you're saying no. We equate kindness with doing everything for everybody, and those two things are not true. Those are stories that we've been told over time that are not, and that we end up telling ourselves in our head. And it feels selfish, like when it's kind of this same concept when we talk about self-preservation instead of self-care. It feels selfish that we're looking out for ourselves because that's the culture that we grew up in. And the reality is that you can't continue to help everybody if you're not helping yourself. And part of that means telling people no. And some of the signs that you need some better boundaries is we've talked about some of that, but again, that you're exhausted all the time. Like, there's this mental capacity is not there to be able to do the things you enjoy because you're so tired. You resent the people around you. You resent people asking for your time. You resent people at work for asking you to do things, because one of the things that is true is that if you just keep doing things for people, they're going to continue to ask you. I mean, it's just part of the human nature. So instead of putting a boundary in place, which we'll continue to talk about during our podcast, is you just resent them instead, and you get really angry about it, right? And the sense of overwhelm. It's just you're overwhelmed with the mental load that you feel like people are putting on you, and I'm going to reframe that for you into you're accepting it and you're allowing people to give that to you. So part of these boundaries are really helping you understand that it's self-preservation, and over time it actually improves your relationship. So just a heads up is that building boundaries it's really hard. It's not easy. When you change the status quo of relationships, the other person doesn't really understand what's happening, and that's okay. That's okay. They don't get to do that. I have some of my clients who would tell the family member or their friends or whoever they're trying to build those boundaries around of, I'm putting a boundary in place, and they don't. Your relationship people who you're building that boundary with don't have to understand that. That's not their job. And so it's really just about saying, here's what I'm doing, and then following through with it, and that's part of the boundary. So again, boundaries are self-preservation. It's not selfishness. You really want to stop and go, okay, how is it that I want to spend my time with this person? What is it that they bring to the table for me that I want to continue to encourage, but leave the rest of it on, at the doorstep? And this is when it's really important that you sit, and we talk a lot about in the Joy Unleashed project and the Flourish Collective, is that you write things out. This is a good time to write things out. You can put it on your phone. And the Joy Unleashed project journal actually walks you through this whole process as well. And you can access that on Amazon or in the link below. And part of this process is writing forces your brain to work harder and work differently instead of just on your phone or typing. And so we really encourage you to write down the relationships you have. Who is it what is the change you would like to see? And how are you going to make that change? So let me give you an example. If you have a family member that is unfortunately just in a negative space, I don't know about you, but I tend to feed off of and soak up whoever is around me and what they're focusing on. So if someone is around me a lot of times that are focusing on the negatives, I can tend to get in that space really quickly. And so one of the boundaries I have is people get to be that way. They get to be in that space. It's not my job to fix it. It is certainly my job to be kind and try to encourage them differently, but that's not my job to fix it, which is a really hard thing for me to get to. But what I end up doing then is if they can't get into a better space, is I just limit my time. I just don't spend a lot of time with those folks, and I will spend about 2 hours max with people if they're just not in this really good space. And I think the reason I do that is because it can take me, if I spend more than a couple of hours with people who are not in a good space, it takes me days to kind of get my mindset back into a better space. And so I just don't do it. They don't understand that. They don't understand why I'm not spending that time. I don't have to explain that to them. It's not their, it's not my responsibility to tell them why I'm doing this. But that's where we get into problems with the boundaries, and this is what we need to reframe. Is the reframe is really not they need to understand the boundaries, it's that you need to understand the boundaries. You can tell them if you want, but that's not really their job to understand. That's your job to understand. So it's this concept around, really boundaries they're like they're not walls. And so one of the other things that we talk about with boundaries is sometimes people and sometimes you have to say, my boundary is I can't spend time with that person. My boundary is I will not work more than 40 hours a week. My boundary is I will not allow my kid to, to spend more money than's in his budget. Whatever that is, sometimes we have to build this, okay, this is a hard boundary. But a lot of times boundaries are not walls. I compare them to fences. It's like there's a fence around you and you open the door to who you choose to. You get to make the decision about letting people in and out. And that's part of this emotional boundary is imagining you've got this fence around you. And it's like, how much are you going to let people and how much are you going to let people open the gate to get in and out? And I think when we think about that, then we think about it more as a invitation in to the boundary and the invitation out. Like you get to come into my relationship with me when you are in a good space and you're in, and this is kind of the rules around the boxes around where our contact is and where our relationship is. When you're not in that space, it's okay to then shut the gate and say, okay, nope, gate shut. So when we go back to the example of allowing people in my life who have a negative mindset, that doesn't mean I don't ever spend time with those people. It means that gate isn't open as much. So I open the gate and I spend a little time because I, care about them and want to spend time with them. But then I choose when to close that gate and when to allow people in and out. And, the thing that is really important is just continuing to give yourself a permission slip. Like, you're allowed to protect your energy. You're allowed to protect yourself. You're allowed to protect your space and what you need and choose what to do with that energy. And so we often grow up in cultures where we're expected to think of everybody else but ourselves. We're told that it's incredibly selfish of us to think about ourselves, and this is just simply not true. We are not selfish when we choose to put our oxygen mask on first before we give it to somebody else. If we don't have oxygen, just the same thing as that oxygen mask principle with the airports and airplanes. If we don't have the oxygen, we cannot help other people, and we cannot be there for other people in a way that we really want to. And so we're really going to talk about this NOVA framework for boundaries. NOVA is one of the frameworks we use for critical thinking, and it's one of the frameworks we use in the Flourish Collective, and it stands for Navigate, Observe, Validate, Analyze Your Boundary Needs. So navigate, observe, validate, analyze, NOVA. And the reason we do this is a good journaling principle on how do you really understand what's happening. The thing about boundaries is it's a habit. So if you've been around very much with cerebrations, you know that we're big brain people. We really believe that you've got to understand how your brain's working and the habits your brain has formed, and then unlearn those habits and learn new habits. Well, we can't do that if we're simply sitting around reacting to everything. So part of these boundaries are habits our brain has developed over time, a long time, and we have to unlearn them. But to do that, we have to be aware of what's happening, because if you're just continuing walking around reacting to things and not thinking through it, then you're not going to change. And so this navigate, observe, validate, and analyze is really a journaling principle and an observation principle to sit down and go, okay, how is this really happening? So navigate, you identify your non-negotiables. So if we go back to that relationship issue that I talked about earlier with people who are in a really negative mindset, my non-negotiable, because I can't sit around people for days at a time who are incredibly negative. It takes me a long time to get my own mindset back into a good space, and that's part of how the brain works. And we get into our brain looks for patterns, and so if we're around, in my case, if I'm around people who are negative, my brain will look for that pattern and start mimicking it. So my non-negotiable is when people are not in a good space, is that I cannot spend days at a time with them. It's just a non-negotiable. I observe how that over time, we observe how the energy drains and gains then is impacted. So what that means is that in my case, I was able to go, wait a minute, like I've been in a really not good space for about 3 days. What did I do before this? And so it's the observation of being able to understand, oh, okay, that's what's happening. So it's really important that we not only talk about our non-negotiables, but we observe what happens when we put those non-negotiables in place or we take them out. So if I put that non-negotiable in place as of I can only spend a couple of hours a day with that person who is incredibly negative, that shows me that it's draining or it's gaining. Like this is kind of what I've been able to understand, is that when I spend all day with them, it is a full drain. When it's spend 2 hours with them instead of 2 days, then I notice that I have more capacity to really change the way that my brain is thinking. The V in Nova is to validate, honor your feelings and your needs. Like it's okay to honor yourself. It's okay. It's not selfish to say, this is what I need. This is what my family needs. For all the other, to-do lists I have, this is what I really have to do. And the analyzation, so the Nova analyze, is just create your boundary action plan. So as I've been able to look through the non-negotiables, I'm noticing, and I'm writing down kind of like, okay, when I do this is what's happening to my energy. This is a drain. This is a gain. I validate my feelings, and then I create a boundary action plan. So over time, that's where I've started realizing when people are in a really negative space, and it's I just can't spend that much time with them. So I have to shrink down my time that I spend with them until they can get into a better space, or they're willing to kind of talk to me about why they're in a negative space. They're self-aware of their own negative space, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so that's my boundary action plan. So I think that when you form that boundary action plan, what happens is it gives you a very clear, here are the steps I'm going to take to protect myself, keep this relationship if I choose to do that, but not allow it to impact me. So this Nova framework can work in your work. It can work in your friendships. It can work in your relationships, your family relationships. It can work anywhere. And so again, it's navigate, observe, validate, analyze your boundary needs. And what is it you really need to do for an action plan? So again, if you're interested in how does this work, the Joy Unleashed journal walks you through some boundary action plans on how to kind of think about boundaries differently. So when we talk about how do you say no to people without, because part of what we always experience with my clients is they often are concerned about being mean, not being kind, not being, being seen as not a nice person when you start saying no, when you start putting boundaries into place. And so what's really important is that you actually have boundary scripts. And I practice these, and I encourage my clients to practice these, saying them out loud. It can feel very weird to talk to yourself in that way. But the reason why I suggest you practice them is that then when you say things out loud, your brain actually hears it in a different way. And it then becomes used to the words so that it doesn't feel so foreign when you're trying to do that in a very emotional space with a family member or any kind of relationship where you're putting these boundaries in place. So we're going to go through four practical boundary scripts to be able to talk through this. So for family, you can say, I love you and I need to take care of myself too. What I love about this script is that it presents a positive thing, as in I love you. just because I say no to you doesn't mean I don't love you. And sometimes that's the culture and the messaging we've gotten over time, and our family has gotten as well. But you can love someone and take care of yourself. And so when you have to put these boundaries in place and you have to tell people no, I really like that one for family, because it presents the positive first that they're going to hear first. And so I love you, and I need to take care of myself too. For work, this is my favorite one. Let me check my capacity and get back to you. One of the things we often do when we don't have very good boundaries, we just say yes before we even think through it. And so you're giving yourself some space to determine whether or not you have time to do that, you want to do that, it's in your wheelhouse. And instead of saying, no, I'm not doing that, it really gives you the opportunity to take a breath and take a step back and decide, is this something I really can do and that I should be doing? And so again, for work, you can say, and you can say this for family or friends too, but just let me check my capacity and get back to you. One of the things I noticed when I was starting to work through these boundaries is, again, I just said yes to everything because I hated to say no. And then what would happen is I would schedule things with people, and then I really didn't want to do it. And so I'd back out the last minute. And it wasn't because I was not honoring the appointments or not honoring our friendships or whatever. I just didn't know how to tell people no. So what I say now is, let me check my calendar and I'll get back to you tomorrow. And through that process, it allows me to not react into the emotional space that I may be feeling because there's an expectation that I feel like I should meet for someone. But I'm able to truly say, yes, I can do that, or no, I can't. And what I find, and this is the really important part about boundaries that we talked a little bit about in the beginning, is that when you can start putting these into place, your relationships actually get a lot better, because people aren't expecting you to do things that you can't do, nor do you feel like you're being expected to do things you can't follow through with. And so that had a huge impact on my relationships, to be able to tell people I need a minute before I make the decision. For friends, and this is one of the things I think is a really good one if you're a giver and you like to give to people and spend time with people and help people out. You can say things for friends, things like, that doesn't work for me, but here's what does. And so if someone comes to you and says, hey, I need your help moving our house. And it's just not something that you can physically or emotionally manage because you may have other things going on in your life. It's okay to say, I can't really commit to that, but here's what I can do. And so what that allows us to do is still care for people and still show service for people that we care about and we want to be a part of. But it doesn't commit us to things that we just can't do or that takes too much capacity. I also love this one for volunteering or serving at church is, I can't do that, but here's what I can do. And that allows us to just then, again, have space to serve people and to love on people and to give, but not give so much that we can't live our own lives. And part of the other fourth one that we're going to talk about is this broken record technique. And I mentioned this earlier. It's the repeating, it's practicing these scripts, but keep saying it over and over and over and over. And what's going to happen over time is people are going to hear you and they're going to stop asking you to do all the things that they've been asking you to do over time. Again, the reason why that's really important is that it increases your relationships. And so it's one really important thing about boundaries is that it's not to decrease the quality of your relationships, but to increase the quality of relationships. And through this broken record technique of just saying the same thing over and over, the first to yourself and then to other people, people will start respecting your boundaries. It will not be immediate. If you're in a family that doesn't have boundaries, it'll be very confusing to a lot of people. They won't understand. That's okay. That's not your job to make them understand. But this broken record technique just helps you continue to say the same thing over and over. So when we think about keeping those boundaries, again, expect pushback. When you change this is human nature, when you change the dynamic of a relationship, you're going to get pushback because people are not going to understand it. And in some aspects, if you have a really difficult relationship with someone, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better because you're changing the dynamics and they don't necessarily understand that. So how you handle that pushback is you just keep with the broken record technique. Eventually, and you keep the boundary, and I talked a little bit about boundaries being a gate and choosing to open and close that door. And you get to choose those, but one of the things I would recommend is when you're putting a boundary in place is that you just stick to the boundary for a while until they understand that boundary, and then you can change it a little bit if you want to. So you can spend 3 hours with someone that's really negative instead of 2. It's your boundary. You get to do what you want to with it. But I just tell people to be pretty clear and concise and black and white about the boundary in the beginning, because you're going to get pushback. And as soon as human nature is this way, as soon as they see any folding of that boundary, they're going to pounce on it and then expect more from you and expect you to go back to the status quo. Start small. Start with some low stakes situations. And when we talk about low stakes situations, some that are like less emotionally involved, a good place to start this is at work. Because although work is a place we're there all the time, we don't have the same emotional connection to people at work. And so being able to start some of these scripts at work and being able to put these boundaries. So if you're someone that work is constantly adding things onto, because you don't say no, it's easy to sit around and get mad about it, but that's human nature, and it's your job to go, yeah, I'm not doing that. And so part of this practice is at work, you might start putting that question of, let me check my capacity and get back to you before you take on new things. And it's because it's less emotionally involved, it's good practice. The other thing to kind of think about is who's in your corner with this, like who in your support system can you go to talk through this. We spend a lot of time in our coaching programs at Celebrations as well as in the Flourish Collective, and is talking about who's in your corner and who are those people that you can have that community with. If you don't have those people, find them. You can join our free Renewal Collective Facebook group page. You can, be a part of our Flourish Collective as well. But it's really important that you have people that are on this journey with you to give you, kind of prop you up and give you that confidence that you can continue. And you know what? You're going to have to be kind to yourself when you slip up, because you are going to slip up. These are new habits, and we want to beat ourselves up. We want a perfectionism of, oh yeah, I'm going to make this happen and I'm going to do this and it's going to be great. This is a new habit. You're going to slip up. Here's the thing to remember about all of these new emotional habits is that when it takes a lot of capacity to build them, but it takes a lot of capacity to keep them in place too. And so if I'm tired or there's something, big going on in my life that takes a lot of emotions, I'm not that great with boundaries. It's just something that takes a lot of work for me. And so I have to give myself permission during those times to know it's just they're not going to be as great and as clear when I'm not in a good space emotionally. And I know that about myself. And so I also know that when I get back into a better emotional state, that my boundaries are going to be better. But I try really hard not to beat myself up over the fact that I'm allowing the boundaries to kind of feed in again. And because it takes a lot of emotional and brain work to get these boundaries in place and to make them stick and to help them stay in place. And so part of what you just really got to get your brain around in general is that when you're, this is old stuff. This is old brain neuron connected stuff. Going around the old stuff takes a lot of time and energy. And so sometimes when we get into not a good emotional space because of whatever life stressors, because that's what happens, life transitions, because that's what happens, we have to give ourselves self-compassion, that in ourselves some grace, that we're going to slip up. This is just, we're not perfect. And so one of the things I just want you to kind of hear me say is boundaries aren't built in a day, but they're built one choice at a time. So it's making the choice one at a time. Start small. Start with those that are not so emotionally connected, like at work, and that will really help you move forward. So I'm going to challenge you to choose one boundary to implement this week. What is that one boundary that is just you're building a lot of resentment for? It's causing you a lot of stress. And how are you going to change that? As we talk through it, go through the NOVA method. Make sure that you're navigating and identifying your non-negotiables. You're observing your energy drains and how it's impacting you, and where is it that maybe that boundary can help bring down that drain and maybe even add to your energy. Validate yourself. Don't, we want to question our feelings all the time about these things. Am I really, is this really a thing I need to be worried about? The answer is yes, it is. So just trust yourself and honor your feelings and your needs. And then analyze, create your boundary action plan, and then journal through it. Yes, this is what I did. This is the change I saw. This is what I'm going to do differently. And so that's your challenge this week, is just to choose one boundary. And if you're ready to dive deeper into putting yourself first, join me for a free 1-hour Flourish Collective workshop where we'll create your permission slip to put yourself first. You can link in the show notes below, and watch the YouTube if you want to watch it on repeat. And we'd love for you to be part of our community. So just remember, you beautiful soul, you're not surviving the season of life. You're really meant to thrive in it. Your boundaries aren't barriers. They're the foundation for the vibrant, purposeful life you deserve. Until next time, you keep unleashing your joy. So, bye. Hey there, beautiful soul. Thanks for being here on the Joy Unleashed Project. If you're the one everyone counts on, at work, at home, everywhere, and you're wondering when it's finally your turn, I've got something special for you. Join me for a free 1-hour Flourish Collective workshop. Let's talk about moving from taking care of everyone else to creating a life that lights you up. Because you deserve more than just making it through the day. Ready to thrive and shine? Head to celebrations.org to grab your spot. You can see the link down in the notes of this podcast. And this is Mattie cheering you on. Can't wait to see you there.